Look, Trump is screaming every time the cameras are rolling. We're ending this. We're not going to just keep going on. And I'm aggressively sending people to Moscow, a meeting in the Middle East, wherever we got to do to bring the war to an end. And yet this coalition of the willing, they keep talking not just about patrolling some mythical ceasefire, but that they want to have peace enforcers, and somehow they think that that's going to happen. Now, one of the key parts of that, which Zelensky also mentioned here, is something that is categorically rejected by Trump. Let's see if you can pick it out of this clip.
We need to keep working on the contingents that will form the foundation of Europe's future armed forces. Peace will be more reliable with the European contingents on the ground and the American side as a backstop. There must be clear commitments on how this will function.
What stood out to you?
To me, he's just turning the tables. This is so clever of him to try and say what we really need to do is be the aggressor, in the sense our aggression will be the generator of peace.
Yeah, and then the one thing he adds is American backstop. He says, yeah, all this coalition of the willing stuff and an American backstop. We have shown, I think a week or so ago, where even Starmer and after Zelensky left with his tail between his legs after the humiliation in the White House on that Friday, that famous debacle, you see that he's now still saying we need a backstop. Starmer has said we can't do this without the backstop, the American. Trump has said there's not going to be a backstop. We're not going to provide any kind of military force to patrol anything. We want the war to come to an end. And yet here they are still ignoring everything Trump has said. I'm sure that this has been communicated by Mike Waltz, by Steve Witkoff, Trump himself behind the scenes. We're not going to backstop.
Danny,
so why do they keep saying it?
Yeah. Well, Danny, listen, you just saw a beautiful demonstration of manifesting, Danny. He talks as if it's going to happen. He talks as if it's already happened. It's really already happened, but we're going to see it appear very, very soon. So they keep proclaiming it over and over religiously, many of them proclaiming this. So pretty soon we're just waiting for it to rise to the surface. It'll be there. We're just waiting.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while. As a matter of fact, okay, so now then let's touch on the ceasefire issue, since that's been mentioned several times here, and that's a precursor to what could come as a negotiated settlement. At least that's what the U.S. and the Ukraine side has said they wanted. That's why Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire if Russia would agree to it. But the Ukraine side, Zelensky specifically, has been kind of miffed that Putin doesn't just automatically say, okay, cool, whatever y'all said is fine. He actually put some conditions on it. Here's how he put that.
For many years, Putin has been lying to the world, claiming that he did not provoke or prolong this war. But now, with a ceasefire situation, everything is very clear. Whoever imposes unnecessary conditions that complicate and delay everything, that is the true cause of the war.
Oh, Danny, you gotta love the psychology, right? Let me represent to you really what's going on. I know what you've seen, I know what you've experienced, but here is reality. There we go. The Zelensky actor came out. There's his Shakespearean presentation of the Ukraine-Russian war.
What is that? Shakespeare meets manifest or something? Is that kind of what we're seeing there?
Yeah, there we go. We can marry those, right? We can do that.
Yeah, that's just golly. If we were just talking about, if this was like, you know what? If this was a Netflix series, I mean, we could just laugh at it and say, "Oh, that's so dumb. That would never happen anyway." But golly, that's so dumb. But it's not a Netflix series, at least not yet. I'm sure it'll probably end up being that way. But
no, and Danny, you so I know, and you so perfectly couched everything as to what this all is leading up to and what it all means, and for this to play out the way it is playing out is it's horrific. It's horrific.
So in these last few minutes, Gary, I mean, let's talk a second about the other half of this equation, which none of these people ever want to talk about here. What motivation would Russia and Putin specifically ever have to take Zelensky's version of reality and say, Sure, America and Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, so you should just take what we said and do it, because that seems to be his implication.
Yeah, Danny, I've not as much as you have, but I've been watching Putin here more than I ever have in my life. Really, I guess he's been. There's been reason to watch him before, but even now, over these last few years, and I am taken by the amount of measure that he has, his demeanor. It's amazing to me that he hasn't been fed up, and he's had so many opportunities. You laid out the different times over the course of these last 3 years where there was opportunity to end this, and there were very real possibilities, and Zelensky has shunned it. Zelensky and everyone else that was backing him have shunned those opportunities. So the fact that Putin hasn't just thrown up his arms and say, really, you want it, you got it.
And you get the feeling that's not far away, because I mean, you and I have been talking sometimes even off camera that there's a lot of chatter, not so much in the background anymore in the Russian side, actually out in the open. There was, as a matter of fact, there was an article in the Washington Post, I think just yesterday, to where they said Putin's got a lot of not threats, but pushback coming from the hard right inside Russia, that they don't want him to do any peace deal. They just want to continue to go on. You know what? I think you had that. We had a full screen of that yesterday. You still have that handy by any chance? And if you don't,
tell me more. Something from the Washington Post?
Yeah, it's from the Washington Post. Let me see if I can pull up that headline here so I can see what I actually sent. Oops, wrong one.
I'm looking too.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm on the right screen here. I'll pull it up. I'll read you the headline. It was, if peace comes, Putin could face the ire of his most hardline backers. And if you can pull that up, that'd be great. But in the meantime, I'll just read off what it said. Military bloggers and influential nationalists are calling this, again, Washington Post, calling the proposed ceasefire an attempt to steal victory from Russia. Pro-Kremlin political analyst Sergei Markov wrote on Wednesday, "What is our specific Russian joy here?" asked nationalist writer Zakhar Prilepin on Telegram. After the widespread Russian delight over the month's Oval Office confrontation between Zelensky and President Trump, what matters, he continued, is how combat ready the armed forces of Ukraine are, and how Russian Orthodox Church fares in Ukraine, and whose soldiers are walking around in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkov, Kramatorsk, and Kherson, which, according to our constitution, are all part of Russia. That's what the Russian side is saying. And they're saying, look, we don't want this to come to a peaceful end if it means that we don't get the war aims that we have. And to a lot of them, especially Odessa and Kharkiv, in Kherson City, they consider all those Russian cities, and they don't want anything that's going to stop short of that. And apparently many in the military and even some generals are really of that mindset. So the question is going to be, how much longer can Putin hold off those sides? Because we saw what happened in, I guess it was 23 with Prigozhin, who was the first really pressing about, got mad at Putin for not pushing hard enough. And one wonders, now he ended up mysteriously getting killed. So that's a pretty chilling message. But it seems these people are getting more and more bold. How do you see that playing out?
I don't know, but I'm not surprised. Maybe that's even one of the reasons, if you remember this week, how Putin showed up at Kursk in military gear.
Yeah.
It was it was striking. Everybody commented on that. Whoa, what's going on here? He really means business. Yeah, the ceasefire. Yeah, I'll do ceasefire with the gun on my hip. I'll do ceasefire. You can understand what the tension that you just described is there. Again, he's so measured. It's not like he doesn't realize that. And he's weighing it as we go along here. I thought it was also interesting, Danny, the way you pointed out how quickly, really, Putin responded to Trump's request regarding the Kursk region where the men are surrounded, the Ukrainian soldiers are surrounded. I thought what a great sign that was. I mean, and it's funny. The Europeans don't see the hopefulness in that they see. Do you see the dynamic that's going on? Do you see what's the web that's being weaved here? But no, they don't. They won't even recognize that. It was like, it kind of reminds me of what happened when Trump address Congress a couple of weeks ago. He couldn't have done anything right. You could bring cancer survivors on. You could bring spouses and children of people that have been murdered, and none of the Democrats could possibly recognize and at least applaud for these people who have, had tragedy in their lives, and here we're here to honor them. No matter what Trump did, it's not good. And the same thing with Putin. Even when Putin shows reasonableness, doesn't matter, as you said. Putin evil, Russia evil, period.
Now, we're a little over time here, but I do want to at least get your thoughts on one more thing here. And that is, how do you see the growing challenges and dynamics between Trump and Europe? Because we seem to be pursuing different outcomes here. And at some point, it may come to a head. How do you see that playing out?
What do you call it when you reserve yourself? He's holding himself back. Trump, I think, in the very beginning, after the rumble in the White House with Zelensky, he was quick to say, "Listen, man, you want to go your own way, but you're doing it without me, and I'm not following you on this." And he hasn't said anything quite that acerbic since that time. With all the not the rumblings, with all of the with what the coalition is trying to accomplish here. He's actually been tolerant. I'm surprised he hasn't outright spoken out against it at all. He had them in the White House, right? Macron came, Starmer came, right? Very cordial with both those guys. And he let them say what they wanted to say. And was, showed a beautiful example of tolerance. So I'm waiting for him to say, will you guys knock it off? I'm trying to get something done over here. Do you see what's going on? Will you shut the hell up, please, so I can accomplish this piece?
I think if push comes to shove, Trump, I don't think Trump is all about and has shown really, I think, as you said, great restraint in dealing with the Western Europeans so far. But if they start to become a genuine impediment to him accomplishing what he wants to, I think he's going to cut bait.
Cut bait, bring down the hammer, in the blink of an eye, he'll bring the hammer down.